I know he watches me. Let not your heart be troubled. His tender words I hear, and resting on his goodness, I lose my doubts and fears. Though by the path he lead me, but one step I may see. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. For his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me.
The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Holy and gracious God, we come before you to mourn our brother John Steimer. We pray, dear Lord, that you clasp John to your bosom and bless him with eternal life in your kingdom of heaven. We pray that he may be free from all that afflicted him in this life, and loose from any pain that bound him on this earth. May you bless him with peace, with comfort, with freedom, and with your boundless love and mercy. O Lord, we ask for your comfort and strength upon Edyie, Jan, and Lisa, and upon all who love John and who are grieving his loss. We know, O Lord, that the grief we feel as we face the mystery of death is part of the life you have granted us. By your grace, may we rest in the knowledge that John is with you now and for all time, and that he will never forsake any of those who call upon you. We pray all of this in the name of God, the Creator, and the Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
A lesson from the 8th chapter of Paul's epistle to the Romans, verses 31 through 39. What then are we to say about these things? If God is for us, who is against us? He who did not withhold his own son, but gave him up for all of us, will he not also give us everything else? Who will bring any charge against God's elect? It is God who justifies. Who is to condemn? It is Jesus Christ who died, yes, who was raised, who is at the right hand of God, who indeed intercedes for us. Who will separate us from the love of Christ? Will hardship or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? As it is written, for your sake we are being killed all day long. We are accounted as sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord.
And would you now join us in singing the hymn of promise?
In the fall there is a power, in the seed of apple tree. Wounds a hidden promise, butterflies will soon be free. In the cold and snow of winter, there's a spring that waits to be unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see. There's a song in every silence, seeking word and melody. There's a dawn in every darkness, bringing hope to you and me. From the past will come the future, what it holds a mystery. Unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see. In our land is our beginning, in our time infinity. In our downs there is believing, in our life eternity. In our death or resurrection, as the glass of victory, unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see.
A lesson from the 14th chapter of the Gospel of John, verses 1 to 4, in which Jesus says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way to the place where I'm going."
So we're here today to celebrate the life of John Steimer. Commonly, a service like this is called a memorial, and what's implicit in that title is that we will share some of our memories of John, and we will certainly do that today. But there's something else that's implicit when we come together to memorialize someone. It's a question that always comes to the fore whenever someone ends this portion of their life and moves on to be with God. And that question is this: how do we measure someone's life? How do we determine the meaning that we should take away from their earthly existence? Now, for some people, these measurements are about money and power and status. Forgive me if I tell you that in the end, in the last analysis, all of those things are pretty hollow. If I read an epitaph on a gravestone that says, "Here lies Mr. Corporate Bigwig, he maximized shareholder value," I, for one, am not going to feel any particular need to emulate that person. I find myself thinking, is that what life is really about? But it's different when we think about John Steimer's life. When we think about John, there are potentially a great many ways in which we could measure who he was and what he meant to the people around him. We could ask, how far did he go from his beginnings until his end? We could say that he started life in a tiny little town called Brockville near Ontario, spending the summers on his uncle's farm, and then made his way to become a highly successful professional, a man with a huge capacity for numbers and an almost infinite facility for planning. These things are true, but again, they're only part of the story. What we do is not really who we are. We could ask ourselves how far he went physically in his life, And the travels he undertook with his beloved Edyie tell another part of the tale. From the St. Lawrence River to the Pacific Ocean, from Lake Winnipesaukee to Scotland Island and Wales, from a helicopter trip over a blue glacier in Alaska to the tropical rainforest of Hawaii. John and Edyie covered a lot of ground. But still, there's much more of the story to tell. Now, his daughters will tell you that one of the ways we can determine who John was is to examine how he was far ahead of his times. Ask any woman in this room, at least any woman of a certain age, how women were treated 60 years ago. And I'll bet that you'll get a lot of responses that say that many men regarded women as second-class citizens. But John had a very different idea in his mind. For John, his daughters were golden. They were deserving of love, yes, but also of respect and support. In his mind, there were no limits to what his daughters could achieve, and he made sure that they knew he had their back. He was not a man who spoke with a loud voice, but in his quiet way, he was a fierce advocate for Jan and Lisa. That they have grown into the successful adults that they have is a testament to his ongoing encouragement. Now, a pretty good measure of anyone's life is how they treat others. Now, John devoted most of his adult life to working in the field of community health. Now, that's laudable in and of itself. But he went further than just trying to ensure that people who had no advantages in life still received quality health care. Lisa and Jan told me a story about a Christmas party that John and Edyie hosted for the people who worked at the community health center where he was the chief financial officer. Everyone at the company was invited, from the people at the very top to the janitors who cleaned the building. And everyone was treated like an equal. In John's eyes, everyone was worthy of respect, and he made sure that his daughters understood the importance of that respect, because at that party, their task that they were assigned to do was to take the coats of all the guests. They learned early on that equality is not just an ideal that we talk about, but it is a practice that we need to put into action in our lives every day. So how we treat others is certainly a good measure of any life. But there's also another way to calibrate what kind of person we are. And that's this: how do others treat us? In John's case, he earned and was accorded respect by almost everyone he met. Part of his work in community health involved going to what today we might call some very sketchy neighborhoods. Some places where there were a lot of gang activity, some places that most of us would consider unsafe. But John never had a problem. It seems that even the people who lived on the wrong side of the law understood that he was there to help. And his sincere commitment to helping people in their community made them give him a kind of protection that they normally afforded only to their own. That says something about the man whose nickname was the Gentle Giant. I only met John late in his life. My first meeting with him was when he wanted to surprise Edyie by renewing their wedding vows on the 60th anniversary of their wedding. By that point, he had been sick for a while. He had had a couple of really nasty falls, and I could see, it was clear to me that he was struggling just to make it through the day. But make it through the day he did. And I could see, as someone who had never met him before, I could see the determination, the resilience, and the tenacity that marked his whole life. And those qualities are also a good measure of who he was and who he is now that he is with God. I remember at the end of that service when they renewed their vows, John was standing in the narthex, and as I came out of the sanctuary, he gave me a smile of such brilliant radiance that it will be with me to the end of my days. Tomorrow, I'm going to be preaching a sermon in my church about the moment that God called Isaiah to be a prophet. God says, I need a messenger. Whom shall I send? And Isaiah replies, Here am I, Lord. Send me. Throughout his earthly life, whenever John heard God say, Whom shall I send? John's reply was always, Here am I, Lord. Send me. Obedience to God is also one of the finest ways I can think of to measure any life. And there can be no doubt that by that standard, John surpassed what most of us accomplish in this world. At the very end of his life, just a day or two before he died, my beloved fiancée Mary and I visited John in the hospital. He was in hospice care at that point. He was unconscious. Edyie, Lisa, and Jan, their cousin Lori, were all there. Now, I have been in many hospital rooms over the last few years, but never have I seen anyone surrounded by more love than his family poured out to John on that day. To hear what they said to him as he lay on his deathbed was so incredibly moving. And the sincerity, the depth of their affection for John was evident beyond the shadow of a doubt. In the end, although there are many ways to gauge who he was and what he did, for me, to witness his family enveloping him with love was really the only thing I needed to conclude that this was a life well lived. The ancient Greeks have a saying, call no man happy until he is dead. The idea is that bad fortune may overtake us even at the end of our life. But being there with John as his journey on this mortal plane came to an end, he was wrapped up in love by his family. It was clear that John was, at the moment of his death, a happy man. My prayer for all of us in this room this morning is that we may enjoy the same blessing as we make the transition to the next life. Amen. And now it's come to the portion of the service where we invite anyone here who would like to share a memory or a thought about John to come on up. I believe that Edyie and his daughters are going to speak, but perhaps we'll save that for a little bit later. And actually, I'm going to kick things off. There are two statements that have been sent by people who couldn't be here today. So I'm going to read them on their behalf. This is from Teresa Michaud. She writes this. I've had the honor of knowing John while being his home healthcare occupational therapist. He was not just a patient, he was an adopted grandfather to me. Today, we're here to remember the joy he has brought into our lives. John didn't just pass through life, he made a lasting mark. John had a way of making you feel welcome as soon as you came in the door. He would be sitting in his chair and a smile would appear. I would say, hey, Trouble, how you doing? You always knew it was a good day if he was hiding candy in his walker. We would walk, chat, do some arm exercises. He wasn't your normal patient, you see. John had a sense of calmness to it, even in moments of struggle. John had a way of making those around him feel at ease, showing kindness and strength. Oftentimes, when patients have been discharged, I drive by and I wonder how they're doing. But John and Edyie are different. I know I am welcome to stop by at any time. He was incredibly proud of his family and the support he was receiving. It's evident that the foundation of love, kindness, and resilience that John's family shares have shaped them into the wonderful people they are today. His family has made a positive impact on everyone lucky enough to know them. While we grieve the loss of John, let us remember to celebrate the beautiful life he lived. May his spirit live in our hearts forever. From Teresa Michaud. And this is a statement from Kathy Lamont. She writes, I had the great pleasure of meeting John through our shared work with the community health centers in Connecticut. He was a man of great experience, knowledge, and integrity. John's financial and business acumen contributed greatly to the success of our community health center in Torrington. John also had a great sense of humor that got us through many demanding times. All of us at the center felt fortunate to have had an opportunity to work with John. He was the best example of how you bring both competence and compassion to your work. One of his greatest qualities was his love for his family. Edyie and his daughters meant the world to him. He was a loving husband and father. My friendship with John continued throughout the years, even after my retirement. It's difficult to put into words how much John will be missed and what a positive impact he made on each of us who knew him. John was a very special man, and I will miss him greatly. Amen. And now, friends, is there anyone else who would like to say a few words about John? Yes, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Deb Savoy, and John was my mentor and my friend for almost 35 years. I first met him when I was first hired for a community health center, writing grants, and we brought him on board to help develop our community health center. And he stayed with us for a number of years. He loved what we did. This was in Willimantic, and he was with us and was able to develop additional health center sites in our area as well. And we maintained our connection for so many years. He went on to be part of the trade association for state community health centers statewide. And in that capacity, he got to fight with the state about rates and things like that. So he was up for a good fight every now and then, but he did it in a very nice way. What I remember most about him is that he very subtly just tried to impart his wisdom on me. And he recognized the potential in me very early on in my career that I didn't recognize myself yet. And so he was just really eager to share that knowledge. He then later on shared that knowledge with many other health centers across the state as well. I think he worked with probably most of the health centers in Connecticut. And I'm just so grateful that I have been part of his life. Even after he somewhat retired from the trade association, and then he started consulting and traveling to Danbury and Norwalk and Vernon and all of that. I don't think he ever sat still at all. And but it has been such a pleasure and an honor staying connected to him after all these years. Our last lunch together, we had annual lunches after he retired every single year except for the pandemic or when he was ill. And then we had our last lunch in 2023. At that moment, I said, John, you don't need to come up to Willimantic. I can come to you. He said, no, I want to see all the old haunts and all of that. And he was insistent about that. I do have a letter from the State Association of Community Health Centers in honor of John. I would like to read an excerpt from that, if I may. This is from Sean Frick, who was the Chief Executive Officer of CHC Act, which was the Connecticut Primary Health Center that John worked with. Although Sean didn't have the pleasure of working with John, he's heard many of his colleagues express kind words about his dedication to our patients and all the communities that we serve across the entire state. Over John's 4 decades of service to community health centers, John saw our network grow to provide primary medical, dental, and behavioral health services to over 400,000 people across the state. It was very little when I first joined 35 years ago, but that's who we are now. His dedication to CHC Act, when it was known as Connecticut Primary Care Association, and to many health centers over the years, is a testament to his belief that all people deserve access to high-quality, integrated care to live their best lives. Although he didn't provide healthcare services directly, he made a difference in the lives of patients by ensuring that health centers were available, accessible, and sustainable. He also served as a mentor to many health center professionals, such as myself, starting out as a grant writer and then becoming a chief financial officer myself, who came behind him and who still hold him up as a model to emulate. Please know that John's work made a difference over so many years, and the network will remember his talents, passions, and commitments for years to come.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Who else would like to share a memory? Yeah.
As I look back at 60 years, 6 months, and 3 days of being married to John Steimer, I felt that there was some information that I would like to share with you today. And hopefully you'll have a takeaway. We married at a very young age, which was common in the 1960s. Within 2 years, we were the proud parents of 2 little girls. John worked a full-time job as well as a part-time job so that I could be a stay-at-home mother to the girls. Our agreement was that when he came home, no matter how late it was, he'd have a warm plate of dinner, and then we would talk about the day, my day with the girls. We were very, very different in personalities, and that made interesting conversations. The girls thought we were a comedy act because I spoke woman, he spoke man. We agreed that whatever I did with the girls, if there was a discipline, he would agree. He would agree. It wasn't long before he became an accountant for community health services that provide health care for those in need. And this was in the north end of Hartford in the 60s. Since we only had one car, the girls and I would drive him to work and then go back whenever he was ready to pick him up. Jan and Lisa learned at a very, very early age that there were people that John worked with that were of different colors. And they also saw that he treated everyone equally. Now this stuck with him and with the girls throughout their lives. Our girls learned that everyone is equal. Everyone is equal. I think Pastor Bill touched on this, but this was a very interesting thing to see. That John treated everyone with kindness and respect. People knew that he, this sturdy 6'3" man, known by the locals as the Gentle Giant, was there for them. Was there for them. I heard a story recently that there was an incident where equipment was stolen from community health services. John spoke to the head of a gang who he had nice relationships with. And miracle of miracles, the following day, all of the equipment was returned. John had the ability to write grants that would provide funds for various projects and programs. He eventually became chief financial officer for a number of agencies. His final project was when he was a consultant, and it was in Torrington, as was said. And it was interesting. The building was absolutely beautiful and had every service that you could imagine. Before the doors opened, people were signing up for dental care because there was no dental care in Torrington. John was a devoted husband and dad. He had the ability to plan ahead. I have not found that crystal ball. I know it's around somewhere and it will appear, but he could look into the future. When it came time for Lisa to graduate from South Virginia down in Newport, he had a conversation with her. And he said, "You're going to stay and get your master's, because there will be a time when that will be a necessity in your work life." He said the same thing to Jan, and they stayed, and in those days, they worked on campus during the summer. His passion for the underprivileged lives today, we as a family limit gifts at Christmas time to a low dollar amount. And we make a donation to health, food services. Family meant everything to John. John loved planning surprise trips. That was very difficult for me. Because I had to know what to wear, where we're going. But he loved it to the last detail. And the only thing that the girls and I were told was if we needed a passport. That was it. Passport. And every day he would he'd be sitting in the driver's seat, and his glasses would be in his pocket. Okay, girls. Here's the agenda for today. Complete surprise. Family meant the world to John. He enjoyed the simple things. Early morning coffee for two on our deck. Watching the mountain laurel that he loved bloom. And the surprise, watching old cowboy movies. He loved the cowboy movies, the black and white ones. He really did. He loved the girls. He loved our niece Lori, who is, we consider, a third daughter, and Zachary. We've had the pleasure of having Zach at our house on, I believe it was Friday. He's little, and we developed a wonderful relationship. I wondered, as he got to be an adult, would he remember the simple things that we did? The answer was yes. Yes. that he did. And we're just so proud of him in his education, because soon we'll have correct me if I'm wrong, a plumber and an HVAC person in our lives. Some people come into this world and they drift through. They don't make a difference in people's lives. Others, like John Steimer, worked long hours, used his talents, and made a difference in the lives of thousands of people. He was a sweetheart. He was colorblind, which I did not know until we got on our honeymoon. He was a man of few words, and he gave the best hugs. We miss him. We miss him, but we are just so proud to carry on the giving and just being good people. Okay. Thank you. I'm sure I'm not taking bills. I just turned them over, Bill.
I'm done, Edyie, it's all right.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being with us today to celebrate Dad's life. It's wonderful to hear the stories about Dad. Jan and I were talking sometime in the last several weeks, and I said I was dreading today, as many of you can probably understand because of the emotions, but I was also looking forward to today because I wanted to hear stories about Dad. And so for those who have shared, thank you, they warmed my heart. But what I wanted to share with you is why Jan and I are fortunate that John Steimer was our dad, is our dad, because he's still in our hearts. And we've had the incredible opportunity to learn many lessons from him and our mom over time, and I thought if I shared some of those lessons learned with you all, that it would, for those who didn't know Dad, you would get to know him a little bit better. For those who know him, you might get a chuckle, and it's okay to laugh with some of the things I'm going to share with you because I'm intentionally sharing some humor, I hope. Maybe it's not, maybe it won't be funny. But the first lesson, and these are in no particular order, share your gifts freely. I think you've all heard that Dad did just that throughout the course of his professional life and his personal life with all of us. From the time I was young, I wanted to learn, whether it be going to school or just learning. When I was really young, like 5 years old, Dad was painting the exterior of our house. To help, I wanted to paint the exterior of the house. So Dad gave me a paintbrush and set me up to paint a drain pipe, which happened to be behind a shrub. So I guess you have to start somewhere. Later in life, when I was an adult, Dad was wallpapering a tiny powder room, and I mean tiny. And I wanted to learn how to wallpaper. So you're here seeing a trend of these father-daughter projects and home improvement kind of things, and there are many more, but I squeezed myself into this tiny powder room with my 6'3" dad, who was not necessarily a small guy in girth, nor am I. So we squeezed into this powder room, and he proceeded to show me how to wallpaper. I think he probably kicked me out at a certain point because he probably couldn't move much. But he happily shared those gifts and many more. Another lesson I learned from Dad was lift others up and be a cheerleader. Dad has always been the best cheerleader for Mom, for Jan, and for me. He always wanted to know what was going on, and he encouraged us. Quite honestly, he was my cheerleader until the very end. My biggest work project, our annual convention, and my coworkers who are here know that to be true, finished just 9 days before Dad passed away. Nonetheless, he was in pain. He was suffering. He wanted to hear all about it. I always had to call Mom and Dad when I was leaving the Mystic Marriott parking lot where the convention is held and give them a full report, which I also did Thursday night and Friday night before leaving Saturday for this. And I shared the details, and Dad enthusiastically would say, super, super. He really, really was invested in this and wanted to know. Another lesson learned, always have a plan. And you've heard that from some of the people talking. Dad was an incredible planner, whether it was family vacations, home renovation projects at Mom and Dad's house, Jan's house, my house, investing, or anything that required advanced thought. In fact, when COVID hit, Dad had a supply of NR95 masks stashed away in their closet from when the H1N1 flu broke out in 2009. Sal, I think you remember those blue masks that we shared with you and in turn you with your parents. He planned for the unexpected. For those of a certain age, you may remember the TV show The A-Team, which we watched with Dad. In that show, George Papard's character Hannibal was known for saying, "I love it when a plan comes together." That was Dad, minus Hannibal's cigar. Nothing ventured, nothing gained is another lesson that I'm still learning from Dad, because I'm not very good at it. When talking with Dad and presenting him with a problem, he would often reply, "Nothing ventured, nothing gained," and I would groan. I promise to get more daring, Dad, I promise. Smile, you've heard a lot about Dad's smile. His entire face lit up when he smiled. His beautiful eyes sparkled like two sapphires in the sunlight. Now, how Jan and I didn't get blue eyes, I'm not really certain. We didn't, but he had the most sparkly eyes. I treasure those smiles and hope that when I smile, my face lights up as well. I imagine Dad as a young kid sledding down the hill along Farmington Avenue in West Hartford and crossing over Trout Brook Boulevard to Trout Brook itself. Someone stood watch at Trout Brook Boulevard to alert sledders of oncoming cars. I can't imagine the smile that must have lit up his face as he was doing that and the laughter during those shenanigans. He probably reminded me that a smile boosts your spirits as well as those around you. With Dad being the finance guy, he'd also probably remind me that it costs you nothing to smile as well. Don't sweat the small stuff. On our way to Philadelphia for a family vacation, we had to cross the George Washington Bridge on a Saturday. Yep, you know where I'm going. As Dad's co-pilot, I kept my eyes on the road and the GPS. Mom and Jan were in the back seat, reading their People magazines, Angel magazine, and chatting away, which was wonderful. Those of you who know me know I don't like traffic. I soon found myself in the throes of a panic attack crying as we were attempting to cross the George Washington Bridge. Some co-pilot, right? I'm the one that's supposed to be holding it together, you have the driver. The one saying, "Oh, this is a little much." No. He caught on that I was having an issue, and he very calmly patted my hands 3 times. Pat, pat, pat. much like his mother, our Gram, would do when we were kids. Pat, pat, pat. Most worries, like crossing the GW Bridge, are small stuff, and that doesn't warrant our time or energy. Don't let real or perceived limitations get in your way. Mom mentioned Dad was colorblind, yet he was the best interior designer that I ever had known, with the incredible knack of matching colors very beautifully. Better than the three of us could, who I think we see all colors clearly. But he didn't let that get in the way. He was incredible with that. Don't be afraid of hard work. Dad had considerable responsibility at a really young age. Whether it was snow blowing, shoveling as a kid, and if you read Dad's story, his obituary, you read a little bit about that. Working at the West Hartford News and mowing the lawn at a home in my now neighborhood when he was a teenager. Having his own printing press, and no, he wasn't printing money for his future career as a business guy. In working 2 jobs, as Mom mentioned, as a new father, so Mom could stay at home with Jan and Edyie. And wallpapering each of the houses in which we lived, staining all the woodwork in the house he and Mom built in the 1970s. Never mind the career he had working in the health centers across the state. He worked hard, and that hard work paid off for him and his family. On those occasions where I may have expressed not wanting to go to work the next morning, usually on a Sunday night, because weekends are wonderful. Don't worry, Patrice, it wasn't often. But Dad would tell me I had to go to work to make money for cookies. Mind you, he was the one with the sweet tooth, not me. Never give up. Dad went through a lot, and particularly in the last year of his life, and he never gave up. He fought, but it was his body that could no longer fight. His mind was fighting. He was determined. If Dad could fight the physical ailments he had, and there were many, we can't give up on the day-to-day challenges we all experience. Take time to smell the roses or mountain laurel. No matter what is going on in life, you need to take time for things you enjoy. Dad enjoyed being outdoors on the deck for morning coffee. Again, Mom mentioned that, his mom. And admiring the flowers in his beloved mountain laurel, all of which Mom took great care of outside. The hard work is not worth it if you don't slow down and enjoy the things and the people that are important to you. Be kind. Even when Dad was in pain and frustrated, he was always kind and caring. He was always kind to those caring for him. This somehow made things easier for all of us. It didn't fix his pain, but it didn't make things worse. There is no greater gift than kindness that we can give to each other. And again, Dad, being the finance guy, would once again remind me that it costs nothing to be kind. Approximately 20 years ago, I met someone in the medical benefits industry who worked with my father. He asked if I was related to John Steimer, and I very proudly said that he's my father. He had wonderful stories to tell me about Dad. I continue to see this person 1 or 2 times a year at the Cave House Convention and another trade show. And he always asks about Dad with a smile on his face. More recently, I met someone whose stepmother had worked with Dad at Community Health Services in Hartford. And I shared both of these experiences with Dad, meeting Ron from the benefits area and this person whose stepmom worked with Dad. And he smiled and commented on what a small world it is. Yes, it is a small world. I recently came across this quote and felt that it had been written about Dad. And I wish I knew who to attribute the quote to, but I don't know. And it goes like this. Inheritance is not about money. Sometimes your father's good reputation is enough. And wherever you go, you are told that your father was one of the best people. I think that we've heard a lot of that here today. And if I am a fraction of the human being that my dad was, I will consider myself blessed. Thank you for loving us, Dad, and for believing in us. Thank you.
I don't think I'm gonna be as entertaining as my sister, but I will try. You know, I really struggled trying to come up with words for today. At times, I have no words, especially this past year. And there are people in this room, when I had no words, they could speak for me, and they understood. And they conveyed the message that I needed to convey. So originally, I wrote a letter to my dad, and I was going to share it with you. But then I went back to what I was originally thinking and spending time on. We've had a few months, and it's taken a few months, and we're thankful for that time. As you've heard, you know, my father is, in present tense, he's here with us, humble, a very intelligent man, but humble and kind. And I must also say direct when necessary. I may not have gotten his planning abilities like my sister has, but the directness has helped me out in my career, in my life. So I'm thankful for that, for sure. So what I come back to is gratitude. And at a very early age, we were shown by example and by words to extend gratitude. Gratitude to people that make a difference in our lives, our family lives, and the other ones that we love. And gratitude was big for Dad. You know, during the past year, as all of you have been part of it, either indirectly or directly, he really struggled. And as a very independent man, it was humbling. And it was humbling for all of us. And when he struggled, he relied on many people. You know, throughout the year, it was a few, and then toward the end, although I'd like to believe there is no end, there were many people that he relied on. And he would say thank you and please, most of the time. And he did have his moments of being in pain and being Dad, but he did. He extended that. As his daughter, I stand before you and thank each and every one of you. You have all made it a little bit easier in some way each and every day. You know, whether or not it was a quick call, your prayers, praying with us, praying for us, thinking about us, and standing beside us every step of the way. Thank you for that. When you're with Mom, you're also with us, because the strength that Mom had gave us strength every day to be with our Dad. For those in Mom and Dad's community, I believe it's Fenwick Estates. Thank goodness I have that right. When over the last year, especially the last 6 months or so, I'll say we would stroll around the neighborhood, and that was what I would like to say a tribute, rather, obituary is a tough word for any of us to say. We stroll around the neighborhood, myself and my sister would go out with my dad. And we chit-chat with him, and he just loved the warmth of the sun, the flowers, the smell of just nature. And we would stroll with him. And when I say stroll, He wasn't in a wheelchair. He's our dad, and he walked right next to us. There was no wheelchair. And we would speak with him about different things, which confidently he felt very entertained by it, whether or not it was me talking about endlessly, and I'm sure everyone has seen pictures of my puppy Teddy, endlessly about my puppy. And I'd stroll with him and show him around the neighborhood pictures, and he would smile. And like Lisa and Mom said, his face would just light up. It wasn't just a smile. I don't know how he did it, but I'm hoping for the best here in time. The neighbors were so many here, thank you, would smile, a wave, words of encouragement as we strolled with our dad. Now, my conversations were about Teddy and perhaps myself and my colleague, Raul, what was going on in our HR world, which he could always relate to because of his years of professional experience. And my sister, would really talk about the stock market and, different things like that. So it was very much two very different conversations, but Dad enjoyed both with certain things. And the medical professionals were much more than medical professionals. I think that we've all had good experiences, not so good experiences in life, but I can say that the medical professionals, all of them, were amazing. And we're forever grateful. It makes us easier to be able to stand here today and have this conversation for the respect that they showed my father, the dignity, not only to my dad, but to my mom, Edyie, my sister, Lisa, and myself. How the world has changed, and for those people, we're forever grateful. And whether or not it was a doctor, a nurse, a CNA, an attendant, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, anyone that came in contact with my dad, whether or not it was the numerous home visits, or whether or not it was all the appointments that my mom drove him to, especially this past year. Each and every one of them were of value to my father. And he would look at him in the eyes, and he called them by name. Many, unfortunately or fortunately, he knew by name. And he said, thank you. And the experiences that we had at the hospital towards the end, although in my conversations with Pastor Bill, is, please tell me there's no end. And he said, no, Jan, you got it. We're okay. There is no end. Dr. Girardi was a blessing for us, our family. Dr. Girardi is, I'm just going to ask for some help from you. Chief of Pulmonology for St. Francis. No one knows I had to ask my sister that. So. He came to us toward the end, although there is no end, right, Pastor? And he explained to us when our dad was able to share with us his decision. And he was the planner, and it was in his time. Post-convention, Patrice and the team, post-convention by about 8 days. And he shared with us that, as my sister said, it wasn't my father giving up because he never gave up. It was his body. And it was that time. And the explanation and the support that we got from that team carried us through the 3 or 4 days that we were with him in hospice, and we never left. And Dr. Girardi, my cousin Lori, thank you, and Zach, one called to Lori. Lori, we're in that situation. Janet will be there in 25 minutes. She's in healthcare as well. I'll be there. Her son, I call him nephew. He was there. My dad said I needed to see both of them before it was time for me to go, and he waited because he wanted to tell Lori your daughter to me. Wanted to say to Zach, with the career that he's chosen, the technical. There's not enough technical people out there. HVAC, plumbing, he's got a brilliant mind. You're a fine man, and you're a gentleman. So going back to Dr. Girardi, I have to tell a Dr. Girardi story. As we're coming to that point, Pastor Bill and Mary were there, and thank you. Thank you very much. Is Dr. Girardi at the very not so end, he got called into the room after things happened. And it was after Pastor Bill and Mary were there. And I did double check on the prayer that Pastor Bill said because we went to Catholic schools, raised Protestant. I said, Pastor, you have it though, just make sure that you got the whole prayer. And that was at the very end. And I appreciate you saying, Jan, got it. Dr. Girardi held my mother's hand and said, are you ready? And it was as if my father planned it. His ring meant so much to him, his wedding ring. He would never take it off. It got to the point throughout the year when he lost so much weight, it was not going to the jeweler to get resized. We would try and do it so it looked, okay, is the tape on the ring. And we tape it and tape it and tape it. So it would get smaller. My father was not losing that ring, and it was never going anywhere. But when he went to heaven, Dr. Girardi sat next to my mother at the hospital bed and said, are you all set? And he took it off my father's finger just very gently, as if my father, again, planned on, took it off his finger. And he put it on my mom's finger. And now we're here. And that is someone that is absolutely amazing. It was then followed by a personalized note. So with everything that has been very difficult for all of us, and many in this room, it's gratitude. And the gratitude, isn't it terrible when I go off script? I am sure my boss here been saying, oh, Jan, just sit down, stay focused, and Bravo and Christine, thank you for being here. And thank you for my colleagues for always being there, whether or not it was a text at night, a call during the day. Jan, I'm here for you. And then the text would come as, am I strong enough? At the end, before Dr. Girardi came in, you're strong, Jan. You're brave. And that came from my work from him, and I'm forever thankful. And as we go past Dr. Girardi and all of that, Lisa and I, Lori and Zach, want to extend the most gratitude to your mom. Is the love in our family was so deep. It is so deep. My mother for a year did much more than most spouses would do. She cared for him every single day. And over the year, it got more difficult. We did what we could as fathers and as family members. But it was a whirlwind of a year. My mom stepped in, and when she was caring for my father and helping him in personal ways, my father would say, I'm so sorry, hon. And my mom said, this is the greatest gift that I can give to you. And all of the appointments she brought him to, pushing him in a wheelchair, getting a wheelchair, and seeing him in excruciating pain every part that he wanted. She stood next to him and held his hand and said, I love you, John. So for that year between the medical team that I spoke of, all of them, and my mother, we had more time to spend with her dad. And it was those moments that someone can never take away from us. You know, it's folks around you that were there that helped support it. It was our work colleagues that supported it. All of those moments and gave us that flexibility. But my mom is one of the greatest gifts from God. Because there were always options. And she chose not to. She chose to stand by Hartford so we would have those extra moments in time. And we're forever grateful. And I love you, Dad. And thank you to all of you.
John was a planet, and so am I, but that doesn't mean I can't skip over him in this service. Mark happily has Let There Be Peace on Earth queued up, so Mark.
Peace on earth, a peace that was meant to be. With God, children are we, and respond each other in perfect harmony. Peace begin with me, let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my song vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Holy and gracious God, we are grateful that we have known John Steimer. We are grateful to gather together today that we may share our memories of John. And we are grateful that John's spirit will remain with us, just as John is with you. We are grateful for all of the lessons he taught us, for all of the love that he shared. Wrap him up in your arms, dear Lord. Clasp him to your bosom always. We pray these things in the name of God, the Creator, and the Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought to skip something else. And this is a little important. This is the prayer that Jesus taught. Our Creator, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
brought a bunch of electronic gadgets, but I don't think that's how Roy would have done it. I was fortunate to know John pretty much all my life. If you think he was big when you're full grown, when you're a little kid, he was enormous. I did not know he was a fan of cowboy movies, but that's nice to know too. The only way we're going to get through this is if you all help me go, okay? So the lyrics are right in your program, and nice and loud. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about the clouds when we're together? Just sing a song and think of sunny weather. Happy trails to you till we meet again. Some trails are happy ones, others are blue. It's the way you ride the trail that counts. Here's a happy one for you. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about the cloud when we're together? Just sing a song and think of sunny weather. Happy trails to you till we meet again. Some trails are happy ones, others are blue. It's the way you ride the trail that counts. Here's a happy one for you. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Smiling until then.
Friends, I have been reminded that there is one more thing to do today. You have heard that John had a wonderful sweet tooth. And it seems that some angels have brought some cookies. And Lisa, do we have them outside? Or where are the cookies?
There is a picnic basket just outside the room, just next to the sign-in book. So if you haven't signed in, we'd love to hear from you. And also, please grab a cookie. It's a sweet way to remember the life of a sweet man. Thank you for being with us today.
And with that, go with God and go in peace, my friend.
Are you able to?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.